My name is Tim Blumentritt, and this presentation covers industries and strategic groups. Getting a good grasp of a firm's industry is a key part of external analysis. Not only is clearly defining the firm's industry important in its own right, other forms of external analysis depend on this definition as well. All of this analysis feeds into establishing a firm's strategic position. The simplest definition of industry is as a group of firms that share strategic similarities. There are at least three ways of grouping companies: by the products and services that they sell, the customer needs or wants that they satisfy, or the markets that they serve. Because there are multiple ways of grouping companies, there are multiple ways that a firm can describe its industry environment. I'll use Wendy's as a quick example. Wendy's core customer is someone who is hungry and wants a low-cost, quick meal. Its products are centered around hamburgers and fries, and it has a national footprint of locations. Based on these characteristics, McDonald's and Burger King are direct competitors. They share all three characteristics. In this case, the industry can be described as national, quick-service burger restaurants. Let's start moving away from that center to demonstrate the point that other descriptions of its industry are valid as well. Chick-fil-A targets the same customer base and has a national footprint, but it leads with chicken and doesn't even sell burgers. If we include Chick-fil-A, the industry definition shifts to just national quick-service restaurants, getting rid of the burger focus. Five Guys, on the other hand, has a national footprint and leads with burgers, but its offerings are probably twice the price of Wendy's, and it has counter service rather than quick service. Again, the industry description would change, this time the national burger chains, but without the quick service component. In-N-Out Burger also sells quick service burgers to similar customers, but its footprint is much smaller than Wendy's. In fact, In-N-Out Burger isn't even available here in the Atlanta region. Now our industry definition includes all quick service burger restaurants, but only in our region. Moving even farther away from the core, there are upscale sit-down restaurants like Holcomb and Finch that offer burgers. You can always pop into a grocery store if you're hungry, and gas stations like Quick Trip are everywhere and sell snacks. The point is, considering all three ways to group companies leads to the best results. In this case, if you only focus on products and service offerings, Holcomb and Fitch is a direct competitor. If you only focus on customer wants and needs, grocery stores would be a competitor to Wendy's. Both of those seem like they wouldn't be all that helpful in strategic analysis. But considering all three creates a strong foundation for treating industry dynamics. Wendy's clearly competes directly with McDonald's and Burger King, but it also competes to lesser degrees with alternatives like Chick-fil-A, Five Guys, and In-N-Out Burger. So considering those types of companies could also be helpful if a more expansive view is warranted by the decisions that have to be made. We can also move the other way. Instead of getting more and more expansive about our definition of an industry, we can also look for subgroups within a clearly defined industry. Take airlines as an example. All of the firms on this slide could easily be categorized into a single industry: companies that provide air travel to passengers in the United States. However, they don't all compete directly with one another. United, American, and Delta all fly to lots of destinations, many with a great deal of frequency, and charge prices that are commensurate with the amenities that they offer, like attractive frequent flyer programs and airport lounges. Alaska Air, which owns Hawaiian Air, has price points similar to the big three, but specializes in flights to non-contiguous states. Airlines like Frontier and Southwest compete on price. Separating these firms into groups are mobility barriers, or factors that make it difficult for a firm in a particular strategic group to move to another. For instance, based on its current characteristics, it would be extremely expensive for Frontier to try to offer all the amenities that American does, even as it services many of the same locations. And their customers would all have to accept the higher prices that come along with the additional amenities. That is, once a firm establishes its strategic position, moving to other positions that are already occupied by strong competitors is quite difficult. Once defined, an industry, or a strategic group within it, can be described by several characteristics. Industry fundamentals include straightforward elements such as a description of the products and services that the firms sell, the size in terms of total revenues, and the growth of the industry, and the average profitability levels of all the firms in it. Market structure describes how firms interact with one another. 3 basic descriptions of market structure are fragmentation, or the degree to which market share is divided up among many firms or concentrated in a limited number of powerful firms, the industry's diversity, or the degree of similarity of the products, services, and business activities of the firms in it, and dispersion, whether firms are geographically clustered together or spread around different areas. Dynamism observes the rate of change in an industry, including its position in a life cycle, the rate and degree of innovation occurring by the firms in the industry, and the possibility of disruptions or developments that would significantly change the basis of competition in the industry. A bit more about industry dynamics on this slide and the next. First, firms often grow by entering adjacent industries, or industries that share some, but not all, of the characteristics of the firm's current industry. I'll use the history of Nike as an example. When the firm launched in 1964, it was named Blue Ribbon Shoes, and it was an importer. It shifted from just selling shoes to making them in 1970 with the creation of its waffle pattern running shoes. This is an example of Nike shifting its industry participation. When it went from just importing to manufacturing, Nike then competed with different sets of firms. The shifts continued. Instead of just selling to runners, it entered the basketball market in 1973 and entered other sports like golf as it continued to grow. It opened its first retail store in 1990, a momentous event because now it was a direct competitor to companies like Foot Locker, which it previously relied on for retailing its products. In other words, over the timeline on this chart, Nike went from being a simple importer of track shoes to a multi-channel producer and marketer of shoes and equipment for a variety of sports. All of the changes occurred through small steps into nearby industries. We'll talk more about multi-industry participation by a single firm in the corporate strategy unit. What is important to note here is that the industry that a firm competes in can shift over time, especially as it seeks growth. Industry dynamics are also notable when something disrupts the standards of competition in an industry, even if the industry definition stays the same. Take Airbnb and TikTok as examples. The technologies that these firms developed completely changed the basis of competition in the hotel and social media industries, respectively, generating a great deal of success for themselves and a scramble to respond on the part of their competitors. Competition in those industries radically changed as a result. To conclude, clearly defining a firm's industry is a vital first step in conducting external strategic analysis. Without a clear view of which firms comprise the industry in question and which do not, good external analysis is just not possible. Once you have suitably defined the industry, then you can describe it, such as through its fundamental characteristics, its market structure, and its dynamics. These details add nuance to how competition plays itself out in that industry. And that concludes this presentation.